Thank you very much. As said, my name is Tony Fonts. I'm from the Whitsundays. It's been a long meeting, and I'm glad we're at the end because we've reached item number 9, which is why I'm here. I've enjoyed the meeting, but climate change has changed just since the meeting has started. However, it hasn't changed my point of view on climate change. I have to admit that I've been living the dream. I'm one of those few people that can call the Great Barrier Reef their home. And for the past 40 years, I've worked as a diver on the Great Barrier Reef. And it's certainly been a dream. Unfortunately, over the last few years, that dream is fast becoming a nightmare. I've watched the reef reeling from the impacts of climate change. And I've watched some of my favorite dive sites, literal cornucopias of life, turn into barren wasteland. Now, of course, everyone here is very familiar with climate change, and most of you have probably read about impacts on coral reefs. You know the term coral bleaching, ocean acidification, sea level rise. Well, I've read that too, but I see that. Every day I go diving, I see the impacts of climate change. I see the coral bleaching. I can touch the coral bleaching. And Madam Chair, did you know you can smell the coral bleaching? When you exit the water, your wetsuit's covered in a slime of dead coral. Now, diving on a dying reef is not a good experience. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It is soul destroying. And I'm sorry to say that my children will not experience a reef as I've experienced over the last 40 years. No one in this room will. That's what brought me down here to Brisbane to ask a question, which I'll get to now. You've covered this numerous times, but I've made the trip, so I'll fire away. We just heard about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change 2018 report. Some of the details you may not be familiar with. Their report states that if we do manage to keep it at 1.5 degrees warming, we will still have about 30% of the world's coral reefs. In other words, 70% will die. That's not something I can live with, but I have to live with that because that's the best we're going to achieve. If we exceed 1.5 and we get up to 2.0, the IPCC report states that we will lose 99% of the world's coral reefs. I don't think anybody in this room can live with that. But that's the future we're facing. Now, Suncorp has stated numerous times tonight that you back the Paris Accords. I assume the IPCC. So my question regarding do you back it? I know the answer. However, I've got a second question that I'd like to ask. And it gets back to the idea of continuing to support oil and gas, which will, you're keeping the door open. You got your options open. And I know this is a living document. But until we stop supporting coal, oil, and gas, the Great Barrier Reef is going to die. I don't think you support that. So why do you support oil and gas?
Mr. Fox, actually, Steve, you can speak on this, but I'd like to thank you for taking the trip. It's a significant trip to come to the meeting, and as you rightly say, we have spent some time on discussing the importance of this issue. So the fact that you've asked your question, I hope it hasn't been lost on you that we've spent quite a bit of time considering. But I think you've heard my voice for quite a few hours. I might give the CEO an opportunity to comment also, because at the end of the day, the executive team are really prosecuting and taking the way forward on this for us.
Thank you, Chairman. Look, I recognise the points you've made. I think it's really interesting from our perspective to get a perspective that comes straight from someone who spends a lot of time on the reef. So that's obviously something that we're pleased to hear. Not pleased to hear what you're seeing, but pleased to get that perspective from you. It's been a privilege for me to be the chair of the Suncorp Corporate Responsibility Council. Many of the initiatives that you hear today are a reflection of the work that we've been doing, and I'm proud to have led that. And I guess I get a little bit disappointed that we've got a lot of focus on this last little bit of the story that, as you say, it's an evolving activity and evolving documentation, and we will continue to reassess and we'll continue to review and we'll continue to bring our progress forward. And it is disappointing to have a focus on that when we have done so much as an organisation. We've done so much to address our own environmental footprint. We've done so much to protect the group of people in this room, our shareholders, around the impacts of increased frequency and severity of natural hazards. We've done so much in terms of our responsible investment policy. So, we have taken our exposures there to a very minimal level, and they will transition out over time. And similarly in our underwriting, and I accept your commentary around oil and gas, and I say again that it's an evolving activity. And I'm very proud, as Gary mentioned before, of the proactive stance we've taken with the government. And, there's a generation of individuals in the next 2 generations, I think, who will be, continuing to deal with cyclones, continuing to deal with floods and bushfires. And there is a big role for government in working with the private sector, insurance particularly, to help mitigate those activities and provide some resilience into our communities and support them with incentives to do so. So I think we've done a lot as an organisation. We've heard feedback around the room today, and we take that on board, and we continue to evolve, and we'll continue to reassess. And I thank you for the perspectives you brought to us.
Thank you very much. I think it's worth noting one more time that decisions made here today impact far more than the few people in this room.
We agree with you, Mr. Fox. Thank you very much.